The S23 Ultra is now official, and we'll be getting a review on it very soon. We'll be doing plenty of camera comparisons and a ton of coverage, but until then, if you plan on pre-ordering the S23 Ultra right now, should you get it over an iPhone 14 Pro Max? I got to test the S23 Ultra for a bit at a hands-on briefing event that I went to last week, and of course, having used the S22 Ultra for a few months and the iPhone 14 Pro since launch, I do have a fairly decent idea of how the iPhone 14 Pro Max would stack up against the S23 Ultra. So, let's get into it. But first, every phone needs a case. So today, we're sponsored by Defy, the world's most popular tech accessory brand. They've already sent us some beautiful S23 Ultra cases. More on why Defy is such a great choice later in this video. So the most important thing for most people is, of course, the cameras. And we do have some big differences here. In terms of the Ultra, they both have 12 megapixel sensors. In fact, they even have the exact same sensor specs. The S23 Ultra has the same ultrawide as the S22 Ultra, which did have better processing in daytime and much more detail in nighttime than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. When it comes to the telephoto modules, they both have a 3x zoom module. The iPhone's is 12 megapixels, whereas the Samsung's is 10. And once again, the S23 Ultra is using the same module as the S22 Ultra, and here, the iPhone 14 Pro Max was better than the S22 Ultra. But the S23 Ultra also has a second zoom module, and that is that 10x periscope zoom, and that's just incredible. It simply blows the iPhone 3x zoom out of the water. Not only that, but the S23 Ultra also features AI improvements when it comes to digital zoom. As before, the 20x and 30x already looked incredible, but now these are set to be even better. So if you care about long-range zoom, then definitely go with the S23 Ultra. Now, when it comes to the main camera module, on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, we have a 48 megapixel module, whereas the S23 Ultra has a brand new 200 megapixel module. But of course, that megapixels aren't everything. In fact, the iPhone 14 Pro Max's sensor is actually larger than that 200 megapixel sensor on the S23 Ultra. And from my quick hands-on, the S23 Ultra was more detailed, but over-sharpened heavily at 200 megapixels. Which one is better? Well, you'll have to wait for a super detailed camera comparison for that. But my prediction is that the S23 Ultra will still have better image processing than the iPhone, just like the S22 Ultra did compared to the 14 Pro Max. In fact, it might even outperform the iPhone when it comes to overall sharpness. In terms of video, they can both do 4K 60, but the Samsung can also do 8K 30. Now, with the S22's, video quality was much better on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Samsung has now improved video quality significantly, so we'll have to see how they compare. In terms of the front-facing camera, they both have 12 megapixel sensors with autofocus, and they're both very, very good. The iPhone has a slightly larger aperture at f1.9 compared to f2.2. But yeah, for my quick hands-on, the quality was actually very similar between the two. And they both also have a great cinematic video and great portrait mode, both of which have been improved significantly on the S23 Ultra compared to the S22 Ultra. But I would say that if you need to make a decision right now, if you care about RAW, then get the iPhone. Otherwise, if you care about zoom and a more complete camera package, then go with the S23 Ultra. Now, when it comes to the displays, both of these phones have outstanding displays. These are the best smartphone displays on the market. They're very bright, they're large, they're 120 Hz, the colors are incredible, so yeah, they're very good. There are only two differences that you should know about. The first one is that the S23 Ultra has a slightly larger 6.8-inch display compared to the 6.7 on the iPhone. And the second one is that the S23 Ultra doesn't get as bright as the iPhone does outdoors. So it only gets up to 1,750 nits compared to 2,000 on the iPhone, but in my experience, with the S22 Ultra, which had the exact same brightness, it never really got that bright outdoors. There was actually a significant difference between the iPhone's panel and the Samsung's panel when it came to using it in direct sunlight. Now, when it comes to the design, I know this is very subjective, but personally, I definitely do prefer the S23 Ultra. I love the front that's really squared off with curved edges. It looks awesome. And then you only have a very small single camera cutout in the middle, as opposed to the much larger dynamic island on the iPhone. And in terms of the back, the Samsung comes with a perfect black back, so it looks super, super sleek. And with the iPhone, you can only get this dark space gray. On top of that, the S23 also looks a bit more minimal since it doesn't really have a camera island, and the lenses simply sit on the back directly. Now, I have to mention that the iPhone 14 Pro Max is just way too wide. I've always found it difficult to hold in the hand and use. So the S23 Ultra was actually more comfortable in that regard. But I guess the good news is that the iPhone 14 Pro has the exact same features as the Pro Max. It's just that the display is a bit smaller and the battery is also smaller. So if you want the same phone in a smaller form factor, you can simply just get a 14 Pro. But something else that I think you'll find equally as interesting are the 3 reasons why your next phone case should be from Casetify. Number 1, protection. All Casetify cases come standard with their EcoShock inner lining, 4 times the military-grade standard, and a raised bezel for up to 2.5 meter drop protection. In 3, 2, 1... and it works. 2, customization. Your phone can be a fashion statement, so not only can you choose from hundreds of beautiful designs, some even being partnerships with brands such as Star Wars and Harry Potter, but you can also create your own by using Casetify's easy-to-use website. You can then add your own text, change its color, and customize it however you like. And 3, accessories. Casetify also offers accessories such as screen protectors, as well as phone straps, great for outdoors, and so much more. Simply go to casetify.com/ZONEofTECH to get a 15% discount on their entire offering. Now, when it comes to the performance and the software, the iPhone 14 Pro Max comes with Apple's A16 chip and 6 gigs of RAM. The S23 Ultra now comes with a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, specifically made for Samsung, so the Galaxy edition, and with 8 or 12 gigs of RAM. Now, in terms of benchmarks and raw performance, the iPhone does have about 25% to 20% better performance, single-core and multi-core. But when it comes to the real-world usage, even when I was using the Exynos model of the S22 Ultra, I didn't really have any slowdowns at all. Everything was very fast and very smooth. If anything, I've had a ton of bugs on my iPhone 14 Pro with iOS 16. The biggest one being the storage bug, where my storage was constantly full because of just system storage taking like 100 gigs, and my phone ended up being completely unresponsive. Not even to mention the braking issues at launch or the camera shake issues, if you guys remember that. So yeah, the iPhone 14 Pros have had a lot of issues at launch, and some of them even persist today. Now, iOS has indeed added a lot of useful features over the past few years, such as widgets on the home screen, the ability to hide home pages, and have focus modes that activate based on where you are and the time of day. That's really, really cool. And you also have stuff like the app drawer, which is finally present on iOS. But of course, with Samsung, you get so much more. You can even adjust the display scaling, the DPI, for your own apps to get them to look exactly how you want. You can get full side-by-side multitasking, which is completely absent in iOS. This is one of my main downsides. You can have folders in the app drawer, which are very helpful to keep your home screen clean. You also have decks to connect it to a monitor, external keyboard and mouse, which could be very useful for some people. You can have custom launchers and just so much more. And like I said, ironically, the iPhone has been more buggy for me than Samsung, which didn't really used to be the case like 3 or 4 years ago. Now, when it comes to the unique and special features, the iPhone of course has that dynamic island, which I gotta be honest, it is a gimmick. It looks really cool, but I haven't found a single major use for it since September. On the Samsung, of course, we have the S Pen, which I've also found to be mostly a gimmick, at least for me. I haven't really used it. Just because I'm not an S Pen user myself, but objectively, the S Pen is way more useful than the Dynamic Island. You can scribble stuff down, you can create GIFs, you can highlight stuff, and so much more. Then when it comes to the ecosystem, overall, Apple still wins here. You have products such as the iPhone, the iPad, the Mac, the Apple TV, the HomePod, the AirPods, so loads of different product categories that work so well together. For example, you can use your iPhone as a webcam for your Mac wirelessly, or you can use your iPad as a secondary monitor for your Mac. Or you can use the keyboard and trackpad of one Mac to control another. So yeah, there's just loads of integrations like this. Now, Samsung has indeed improved their ecosystem and integration massively over the years. For example, if you just bought an S23 Ultra and you also have a Galaxy Book, you can transfer the raw photos directly to your Galaxy Book and easily edit them from there. You can also control your phone straight from your Samsung laptop. You can respond to messages. So yeah, they've made a lot of improvements there. You even have universal copy and paste. So Samsung's ecosystem is actually very good now, and it is essentially the second best right after Apple's. Now, in terms of battery, this is a tricky one, because on paper, the S23 Ultra has a much larger battery, 5,000 mAh compared to the 4323 on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. At the same time, the latest iPhones have had very efficient processors. For example, the iPhone 13 Pro Max has been crowned as the longest lasting phone. With the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max, we've actually had some downgrades because of the always-on display and the much brighter screen. So for me, my 14 Pro actually lasts less than my 13 Pro did at launch. But Samsung will now be using Snapdragon all across the board, and considering that Apple had a drop in battery life from the 13s to the 14s, and Samsung actually is going to have an increase, they might actually last about the same now, potentially even more than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Now, in terms of fast charging, we have 45 watts on the S23 Ultra, compared to about 27 on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, officially only 20. The iPhone charges to 50% in 30 minutes compared to about 22 minutes on the S23 Ultra. But do remember that you will have to buy these chargers for both of these phones separately to achieve those speeds. They both support wireless charging, but the iPhone has 15 watts compared to just 10 on Samsung, although you need to buy Apple's MagSafe cable to get 15 watts wireless charging, otherwise it's going to be even slower, 7.5. Samsung also supports reverse wireless charging, which is really cool and useful for charging your Samsung Watch, your earbuds, or even charging another phone. And of course that we have to talk about the prices as well. So the iPhone 14 Pro Max starts from $1099, and that is with 128 gigabytes of storage. The S23 Ultra starts from $1199, although that is with 256 gigs of storage. So yeah, $100 more for the Ultra, but you also get double the storage, you get the S Pen, you get 10x optical zoom, and a ton of software features which are very useful, especially the true side-by-side multitasking. And I should also mention that Samsung has an offer now where if you pre-order the base model of the S23 Ultra, you will get upgraded to the 512 model, which also comes with 12 gigs of RAM. A 512GB iPhone 14 Pro Max costs $1,400, so the S23 Ultra in this case is way less expensive. But yeah, when we get our review unit, which should be in a few days, we'll be doing camera comparisons, so definitely subscribe for that. And until then, you can check out the links here, the YouTube shoppable cards, to get some really great deals on the Galaxy S22 lineup. So yeah, I hope this video gave you a better idea of if you should pre-order the S23 Ultra over something like an iPhone 14 Pro Max. I'm Daniel from ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH signing out. Cheers.